Hey everyone, and welcome to the webinar. We are very excited to talk to you today about the new metrics of the web that is coming from our benchmark report that we are releasing tomorrow. Very excited. But first, before we get into that, let's talk about who we are so you know who you're talking to and why you should give a crap what we're talking about. My name is Pat Reinhart. I lead professional services and thought leadership at Conductor. I've been with Conductor for over 10 years, was a customer for 5 years, been in SEO and search for over 20 years. So really excited to go through this, and I will pass it off to my colleague, Shannon.
Thanks, Pat. Yes, I'm Shannon. I am the Senior Content Marketing Manager and Team Lead here at Conductor, and I've been in content marketing for over a decade now. So, dealing with a lot of the same challenges that I'm sure a lot of people on this call are. So with that, we can go ahead and dive right in. So obviously a question we're going to be answering today is what are the new metrics and benchmarks for AI search and AI overview? So as we all know, search has changed yet again, but this time it's a massive significant change because the benchmarks of success are really not built around keywords or rankings anymore. The new benchmarks are about kind of answers and whether or not your brand is showing up in them. So AIO and answer engines are now where discovery happens. Your customers are asking questions in new places, and the brands that are showing up in those AI responses are the ones that are really shaping perception, trust, and market share. So the exclusive kind of AEO, GEO benchmarks that we're going to walk you through today reveal what this new visibility looks like and which brands are earning credibility in the age of AI search.
Yeah, and I think everyone's keep an open mind here as we go through this change. But I think what we're going to show you today is really interesting. Like Shannon and I were going back and forth over the last few days about a couple of quotes and a couple of points that were brought up, and a lot of it was surprising even to me. Like things that I thought were happening were not necessarily happening, but there are definitely things in here where you like if you've been in the industry and you've been in the space, you feel like I can kind of feel this happening. So let's jump into it, Shannon.
Awesome. All right, so a quick rundown just so everyone understands the methodology behind the benchmarks report, as Pat mentioned, is publishing tomorrow, and the data that we're about to show you. So using Conductor, we analyzed over 13,000 domains from leading brands. Each of those domains was categorized into 10 industries and further categorized into 22 sub-industries. All of these map directly to the GICS, or the Global Industry Classification Standard. The AI search market share leaders that we'll show you for a few industries are sourced from an analysis of those domains being cited against our index of 3.5 million unique prompts between May and September 2025. The analysis included 17 million AI-generated responses and over 100 million citations sourced from our AI search performance and AIO reporting index in the Conductor platform. For the findings on AI search traffic, organic traffic, and referral traffic by answer engine type, that was sourced by analyzing anonymized and aggregated traffic patterns across 1,200 of our enterprise customer domains to assess how users of answer engines are reaching websites today. So ultimately, we analyzed more than 3.3 billion sessions across all of our data sources. So with that out of the way, let's dive right in. Okay, so just a quick kind of what are we looking at here? This shows the average AI referral traffic by industry. As you can see, it hovers around 1% for overall average across these 10 different sectors or industries. And the IT and the consumer staples had the highest amount of AI referral traffic, whereas comm services and utilities had the lowest amount of AI referral traffic. So with that, I'll pass it over to Pat to add some context here.
Yeah, it's interesting. And again, like looking at this much data and seeing it to contextualize this way is really interesting, because when a lot of people are right now are saying that, man, like we have to shift all of our attention to AI, right? Everything has to go to AI. And when you look at these numbers, that's not really the case, right? Like this is and this is something I've been saying for many months, is that this is not the end all be all. This is an emerging channel, right? And I think this confirms that, right? This is an emerging channel and an incredible opportunity for folks that are paying attention. But that doesn't mean that you should throw away what you've been doing in search all these years. They complement one another, right? Just like paid search and organic complement each other, and how you have to diversify across other channels. This is, to me, confirmation that AI is still very much an emerging opportunity for everybody, and that you shouldn't. And again, like if the average is about 1% across all these different, it's interesting seeing that like the different areas, like information technology, not that crazy, right? People are asking, tech for tech help, and things of that nature, to using code, for coding and answering technical question. That makes a lot of sense. Consumer staples, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense to me too, because people are asking, questions about products all the time. But it's interesting to see, how low it is in financials and healthcare. To me, and the reason I say this is because AI overviews, which we'll get to later, like just AI overviews, have shown incredible growth in both of those sectors, right? And those were the two sectors that I thought AI would have stayed as far away from as possible in the early days, which is what we were still in, very early days. But but this is kind of showing the inverse, where AI overviews really are answering a lot of questions about healthcare related things, medical related things, financial advice, et cetera, et cetera. When you look across all the sessions and where it's actually coming from and what industries it's coming from, those are actually on the lower side, which is probably a good thing, because I don't think you should be asking ChatGPT for financial advice. But when you look for like month over month, like the average growth, right? So we gave you the overall numbers. Let's talk about growth, and let's talk about how it's growing. What I hear everywhere, and I'm sure what everyone hears everywhere, is that this is growing at a crazy pace. Everyone has to keep up. It's changing every day. That is not untrue, but the amount of traffic and referral traffic that is coming from these, that is coming to these different industries, it is fractional, right? Like it is fractional growth. This is not going from 2% to 5% to 10% to 15%. And this was one of the things that surprised me the most when I saw the data, was how slow it actually is growing. Because and again, like you hear that ChatGPT's activity is actually plateaued, and they've actually started to lose, MAUs or monthly active users, over the last several months. So again, I think that this is another, kind of confirmation for me. And Shannon, I don't know what you think, that this is an emerging opportunity and we all should pay attention to it, but it is simply part of your program. It should not become your whole program. But Shannon, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think you bring up a lot of great points. And yeah, I mean, from like a content perspective, it's all about, how can we prove ROI, like all of these efforts to optimize for answer engines to get, mentions and citations. And folks are really looking at AI referral traffic as like, is that the new metric that we should be focused on? And I feel like what this shows is that is not as important as folks might kind of view it to be in terms of like what you're measuring and how you're measuring success. Just because if you think about like the user experience and how you use an answer engine, I don't necessarily, when I get like, I type in a prompt, I get my answer, and it cites a few different websites, it pulls the information from there, I get the answer I want. A lot of the time I just go in and directly like not search, but type in the domain that I need to go to. So that wouldn't kind of trigger an AI referral traffic, even though AI and the answer engine is what drove me there. So I do think it's like interesting, and we'll have to see kind of how this evolves over time and if this AI traffic increases like significantly. But in terms of comparing it to organic traffic, I mean, it's just night and day difference. Organic benchmarks, which we'll get to shortly, are just much higher, and I feel like have a clearer ROI, at least from like a content perspective.
Yeah, and to actually show that right here, so to really put it into perspective for everybody, when you look at the referral traffic from LLMs and you compare it to to organic traffic and then all other traffic, which would include direct, paid, social, other referral traffic, channels, et cetera, you can see that it is on average really, like you said, about 1%, right? And organic, which is that dark green bar in the middle of each of the charts, you can see that organic search is still like much higher, like much higher, and still very, very important. And again, stat that's been floating around, Google gets 260 times the amount of activity that ChatGPT does on a monthly and quarterly annual basis at the moment. I'm not saying it's going to stay like that forever, but again, my whole thing is that this is an emerging opportunity. It's an emerging channel. And I think this really proves it, right? And I think that's okay. And I knew there was a couple of questions in here about, how does this compare to what organic looks like right now, here it is. And this is based on a ton of data across, of course, multiple different data sets, as Shannon gave the methodology before. But ultimately, don't just throw away what you're doing. This has to be embedded in this has to be part of your playbook. It's not your playbook. And I think that's what I get nervous about when I talk to a lot of other people in the industry, is that they're making this their entire playbook and just throwing everything they were doing. The funny thing is, a lot of what you've been doing from a traditional search standpoint works in AI. Works in AI search. You just have to think about it at a different scale, and you're tracking a few different metrics, right? Mm-hmm. You're tracking, instead of rankings, you're looking at, you're looking at market share for a particular topic. Instead of traffic, it's referral traffic, but also brand citations, brand mentions, right? You just have to think about it a little bit differently. But again, add this in. Don't make it your entire thing, because that's where I think a lot of people are getting held up now. And I hope this data helps convince you of that. And Shannon, I know that we're heading into the next one here.
Yeah, for sure. Just to echo what you're saying, I agree 100%. I don't think it's a SEO or AEO or GEO. It's SEO and AEO. And I think, a lot of execs are like, SEO is dead. And, it's not, which we'll get into a little bit more. But I think this organic traffic view does really prove that point. All right. So yeah, we talked a little bit about this already, but so what does this data mean? What does it mean for you? What does it mean for your brand and your strategies? So for 2026, again, the question really isn't about how to grow your AI referral traffic. It's more about how to grow brand visibility inside these AI experiences. Referral traffic data is simply a signal of where discovery is shifting, and it's not necessarily the goal itself. AI hasn't replaced search. What it's doing is it's replacing your website as that first primary touch point. So the brands that are showing up in AI answers are shaping this new customer journey. That journey doesn't necessarily start with a click anymore. Sometimes it can start and end inside an AI generated answer. And like I said, thinking about your own user experience, where, I get my answer and then I'm navigating directly to the domain on my own. So that would show up as direct referral traffic versus, AI referral traffic. So I think you just have to think about it holistically, about the new customer journey and why it's so important to be showing up in AI search. So, it's challenging because we don't have those, necessarily like the clear core metrics, revenue, pipeline attribution, some of those things. But I think the proof will be in the increased conversions that you produce as you increase those citations and mentions and tracking that. So if your brand isn't visible in these AI answer engines, you're not just, losing out on some of this AI referral traffic. You're becoming absent from this new modern customer journey.
Yeah, and just to kind of highlight a question that was asked and I answered in the chat, is that we have to remember that sometimes your brand does show up and people simply do not click. In fact, that happens most of the time. Someone finds your brand, sees your brand, there may be a citation there, what have you, but most of the time people don't click. They just get their answer, and a lot of times what they do is, as they're window shopping or they're going, they're going through their, the custom, their journey to find what they're looking for. A lot of the times what they'll do is they will use a ChatGPT as the research, tool, and then they will go and just directly go to your website. So you may see your direct traffic increase, but that is, but that might actually have been an assist from ChatGPT. You'll never really know that because that's just a search behavior that, that's happening. But ultimately we have to remember that just because like the low level of referral traffic doesn't necessarily mean you're not showing up, which is why you need to have visibility into how often you're showing up, because this is really a visibility game, not necessarily a traffic game, which again is different than traditional search metrics, as Shannon just said.
Definitely. Agreed. Awesome. All right. So we've got some interesting insights here about AI referral traffic by answer engine before we shift gears and highlight AI market share for a few industries. So the main point here, the green bar leading the way across all of these that you can see is ChatGPT. So ChatGPT really is dominating in terms of, having around on average 87.4% of all AI referral traffic of the sessions that we analyzed came from ChatGPT ChatGPT. Interestingly, there are some splits between industries that you can see here. So Gemini actually drove a significantly high share of AI traffic, 21% to the utilities industry. So I think this all just speaks to the fact that you shouldn't necessarily be optimizing for one answer engine. You should be optimizing for LLMs overall, and that'll boost your performance across all of these channels as, AI referral traffic and user behavior fluctuates and they evolve and they come out with new features and things like that.
Isn't it funny how history repeats itself, everybody? Because what are we looking at right here? Look at this. Look at how lopsided this is, right? I mean, ChatGPT is the Google of AI search. It's hysterical. And then you're looking and and Perplexity is the Bing of AI search, but wouldn't it be funny? Because Gemini will catch on more. It will catch on more. But wouldn't it be funny if Gemini becomes like the second place, but like infinitely behind, what ChatGPT becomes? I think that would just be hysterical. But just to, but just to kind of highlight what Shannon and support what Shannon just said is that, listen, a lot of people ask me well, what do I do about perplexity.ai? How do I optimize for Gemini? How do I optimize for ChatGPT? Just optimize for LLMs. It's the same thing. Like a lot of people used to ask me, what's your Bing? Like many, many years ago, what's the Bing strategy? I don't have a Bing strategy. I have a search strategy. And yes, it's mostly focused on Google because they own like 90% of the market, right? You are seeing the exact same thing here, right? So when you are tracking, let's say you set up tracking for LMs, which everyone here should and consider, regardless of who you use, you should have visibility in there. But you have to remember that this is the way that you should think about tracking, right? Track ChatGPT. You should always track ChatGPT because that's the default, right? Then you probably should look at perplexity.ai and you probably should look at Gemini. And those three, you probably get a good idea of how you're doing, because raise your hand if you track DuckDuckGo, right? No one tracks DuckDuckGo. I mean, if you do, good for you. But let's face it, people mainly look for visibility in Google. Maybe some people look for visibility in Bing. That's totally fine. But when we think about it, but ChatGPT is clearly the runaway leader here. So when you think about tracking, definitely track that ChatGPT, excuse me, and then probably Perplexity and Gemini, right? Because you can see here, elephant in the room. Most people should base decisions probably off what ChatGPT is pulling back for, at least what you're seeing there, and that will be your strategy for all LLMs, because the rest of them probably not as advanced and probably will follow suit, much like search engines. So just a quick thought there.
Love it. Awesome. I did see a question in the chat about the slides being available after the webinar. I believe the recorded webinar will be included. It is a link in the follow-up email sent on Friday. But either way, these charts, all of the charts we're going through here, are available in full in the full report, which will be included, the link to that, in the follow-up email Friday. So just a note, don't worry, you'll still have access to these.
And just before we go ahead, Shannon, there's an awesome thought that I just want to highlight in the chat right now from Liz. I think the ChatGPT will get bought by Google because it's powered by Google right now. This is actually a really interesting debate that is going on, right? Because ChatGPT just loses money, right? They're like the WeWork of LLMs right now. And when you think about it, that would be a really interesting thing, right? If those two companies merge. And the funny thing is, SoftBank actually just dumped all their money into OpenAI, which I find very funny, much like WeWork. But when you think about that, like all joking aside, if Google were to do that, like let's say that happened and OpenAI doesn't make it to what they're trying to do, and Google somehow acquires ChatGPT. Talk about it would just be history all over again. They would own all the major search visibility, and honestly, in our lifetime, that would be it. We would all just be at Google's feet for the rest of at least in our lifetime. So I just wanted to highlight that because I think it's an interesting debate, and it's not the first time I've heard that thought.
Awesome. Yeah, great call out there. I saw a few more questions, balancing, getting through our slides. So great questions coming through. So one from Micah about how can you track, quantify visibility of our site in these AI chats? So getting an enterprise AEO platform or an AEO platform that provides, citations, mentions, and overall AI search performance for your brand is key. A little plug, obviously you're on the Conductor webinar. So Conductor does that. We do have a free trial available. So that is something you can explore on our site, but there are other tools out there as well that you can consider. And then another question, there is data that organic traffic traffic is going down on average 25%, where is that traffic going if it's not going to AI? So I think the key thing to think about, again, is that user experience. Sometimes folks are, typing in a prompt, whether it's to Google search or to an answer engine, and they just are looking for an answer. And so AI overviews is providing them with that answer. So they might not necessarily be clicking then to go to your site. So if they can get the answer they need, that there might not be a website click.
Mhm.
So essentially, some of that website traffic may just be disappearing overall, or may be rebucketed, as we talked about, where folks are just going to your domain directly by typing it in themselves after they get the answer that they need.
Yep, and just to add on to that, for the first question, regardless of what technology you use, obviously you're on a Conductor webinar, and I suggest you use Conductor because it is the best technology out there. But make sure you understand where that data is coming from. There are a lot of technologies that have popped up in the last few months that have vibe coded their UI, and they are scraping the results of ChatGPT. That is very low fidelity data, and you have to make sure that you're working with someone that actually connects to OpenAI's API, right? Because that's where the cleanest data is. And also that gives you visibility across all surfaces that are using OpenAI's API and all agents, more importantly, that are using that API, and not just people who are using ChatGPT. So that's one thing. And then just to support what Shannon said, about the second question, is that traffic is either being transformed into zero click, which they're just doing nothing, or it's more than likely converting into direct traffic. But that time will tell with that. We're still in very early days here.
For sure. Awesome. All right. So we'll keep going here. So we've got AI search market share leaders by domain citation. So again, this is an analysis of 17 million AI generated responses and 100 million citations between May and September. We're just giving you a preview here of 3 out of the 10 industries that we analyzed. So keep an eye out on that email, which will provide you the URL to the full report, which has domain citations as well as brand mentions for all 10 industries. So what you're looking at here is the market share percentage. So these are the brands that have the highest number of overall citations. So they're split out. The bolded top 5 leaders are bolded here, and they have their market share percentage in green. So you can just notice which ones are leading, which here are YouTube, Reddit, Google, Investopedia, and Reuters. And also a quick question that was asked earlier about kind of what industries go where, which domains kind of get categorized where. I recommend checking out the global GICS, Global Industry Classification Standard. They have a website, and that provides a breakdown of you can download a spreadsheet that shows you how they organize all of those industries to see where your domain falls. So just a quick note there. But with that, I'll pass it over to you, Pat, for some commentary on these market share leaders.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, and this should not be surprising to anybody that YouTube and Reddit are high on the list here, right? A lot of people get, second largest, search engine in the world is YouTube, by volume, and a lot of people are, a lot of people ingest short form video now, it gets watched, it's something crazy, 16 times the amount of a regular video, which makes sense because everyone's attention span is very short. But again, I think it just speaks to the importance of diversifying your content. Don't just write articles on your site. Create short form videos. Go get into an argument on Reddit. Go answer a question on Quora. There's a lot of different ways that you can reach your audience because people are searching and having conversations about you everywhere, not just in Google, not just in ChatGPT. Go have content in those places. Use your expertise and go promote yourselves on different platforms.
Awesome. Love it. All right, we'll keep going here. So up next, we have the consumer discretionary industry. So the top 5 leaders here. I know, interesting, you don't necessarily think of education being bucketed under here, but it is a sub-industry under the consumer discretionary industry. And then another flag for folks, I think, was a question earlier of where does retail fall? Retail falls under the consumer discretionary industry. So top 5 leaders here are Clemson, Walmart, Target, Four Seasons, and Cornell. So again, this is across all of those sub industries. So they're all kind of competing for the overall domain citations and AI market share here. But yeah, so Pat, any commentary to add on these?
Yeah, the education thing is interesting, right? But like when you think about it, like think about all the content that is being created, right? Like Clemson, let's say huge football, school, and like there's a lot of content about that school and the team out there. Walmart, of course, one of the largest companies in the world. Target, another large, big box retailer. Four Seasons is really interesting and I think cool to see because hotel chains, they do, and I know that team does a lot of great work, on the content perspective, and they do a really good job of diversifying their content. Again, they do a lot of video content, they do a lot of article content, and it's all very on brand for them. And I think, and not surprising to see Home Depot here. Home Depot has had one of the greatest DIY sections on the internet since the beginning of time. So again, I think this all just confirms that a lot of this, a lot of what these people are doing, they're simply like, they have content that answers questions, solves problems, and also they are positioning themselves as experts and leaders in the industry. And I'll guarantee you that if you go to every single one of these, Sonos right here, well, their number one referral channel, is Reddit, because they have two guys from Sonos that go in and simply help people troubleshoot. That's all they do, right? They don't talk, they don't try to sell anything, they just help people. And this is what LLMs are looking for. They want real people having real conversations and confirming that you're the brand to go to.
Awesome. All right, so only a few more minutes. Definitely want to get to our AI overviews slides as well. So we've got our last industries. So top 5 domains for financials here are interesting ones. So we've got NerdWallet, Bankrate, Kiplinger, Vanguard, and Experian. So Pat, any comments here?
Yeah, this one's the most interesting for me, and I promise I will not rant because I know we have a couple of slides to go to. So I do a webinar called 30/30 every month. Please join. But that's not what this is about. But like ultimately, I have been like watching NerdWallet, Bankrate, and some of these other sites that I would consider like content hubs or content aggregators, right? And from a visibility standpoint in traditional search, it's been really tough for them over the last couple of years, and those teams work their butts off. And but Google has not been kind to them. But looking at this, that it's like all of that content is being successful in AI, clearly successful in AI search. So that is a little bit of an inverted, opinion that I've seen, or an inverse, opinion that I've seen, because typically when you do well or do poorly in Google search, you do well or poorly in AI search. And this is kind of the inverse of that. This is something that I am tracking very closely because it's something that I've actually been watching for over a year. So this is an interesting one. But again, content. I'm not gonna, it's not a sexy answer, but that's really what it's about. All these companies, and I know a lot of them, and I know a lot of them do a lot of work on content. That's why they're showing up, and they position themselves as leaders in the space, and they generate a ton of content.
Awesome. All right. So with our last few minutes here, just want to get into AI overviews, our analysis here. So just a quick methodology recap. This data comes from a 4-week analysis from September 15th through October 12th across 21.9 million unique Google searches. And of those searches, nearly 5.5 million generated an AIO result. All right, so what are we looking at here? This is AIO visibility by industry. So this is the percentage of search queries triggering an AIO result by industry. So as you can see, a lot of differences between industries. Healthcare, nearly 50% of those queries are generating an AIO. And I will say overall, of the 21.9 searches that we analyzed, 5.5 million generated an AIO result overall, which is over a quarter of queries are now triggering an AIO result across these 10 industries. Pat, want to drill down into any of these specific insights here?
I said this before. I just find this so wild that AI overviews are like the highest ones. I mean, outside of utilities, the next two highest are financials and healthcare, which are like YMYL, or your money or your life terms, meaning it has the ability to impact your physical or financial well-being. So I think that Google is operating, at least the AIOs are operating differently than how other LLMs are looking at this. Again, this is something that we'll have to track over time. But AIO results seemingly have plateaued a little bit because they were really hitting the gas and they were going crazy. And now over the last 3 months, we've actually seen them kind of plateau. So I don't know if Google's taking a breath or maybe they've just found some equilibrium. But really interesting to see healthcare, of all things, as one of the highest. I know people ask a lot of questions about it, but is Google the right place to get that? Like, is Google AI Overview the right place to get that answer about Medicare, Medicaid, and other things related to it? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, I think that's a good flag, for sure. But yeah, I think it really just reinforces the importance of making sure your content is optimized, structured, and everything to win and secure these AIO results as they become more and more prominent. Okay, our last slide here is about the top cited page types. So what page types get cited most often in AIO results? So nothing too shocking here. The top 5 were blog content, video content, article content, news content, and then product pages. So again, not too surprising, tracks with what we know about AIO. Any additional insights to provide here, Pat?
Yeah, I mean, this shouldn't surprise anybody, right? Like, what are they looking for? They're looking for content, right? Blog articles, news articles, videos. I think video is much more important than people realize. So if you don't have like a video strategy, I really think you have to build one this year, and you have to figure out a way to get video out, if it makes sense for your business, of course. Because that's what I'm seeing grow the most. Like blog article type content, that's always going to be there, right? But video content, I think, is what's been growing at the biggest clip, over the last, I would say, 2 years. So just something to think about. I think this kind of confirms that here.
Yeah, I saw a question, what's the difference between a blog and an article? The way this analysis worked was really based on like site structure. So it's kind of just the difference of whether or not you kind of bucket it as like an overall article on your site, or if it's bucketed on its own underneath kind of like a blog structure. So I would say that's kind of like the main difference here in terms of our analysis. I think the main takeaway with blog being number 1 and article being number 3 is long form content is performing super well on AIO, thorough, in-depth, things that they can summarize easily and AIO results.
Yep. And with that, everybody, we have reached the end. Thank you so much for spending 30 minutes of your valuable time with us. Shannon and I really appreciate it, and we appreciate you staying a couple of minutes beyond. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. We're pretty easy to find. And again, thank you for your time, and we hope to see you on the next one.